hard to follow that, but no tears right now, guys. We got time afterwards to cry, tears of joy for some, sadness for others. This really has been this has been super tough. So I definitely don't want anybody thinking that it was personal or anything like that, because that's not the case. I've enjoyed every minute of my time here, and I told PJ I feel like I still have some unfinished business. So there's always a possibility that I circle back and just you know. we never know what the Lord has in store for us, So it has been a struggle, so I don't want you guys out here thinking like, man, this guy, he got a taste of us, and then he saw us without the mask, and then now he's out. And I promise that's not it, all right? But I can say that honestly, there have been sleepless nights, and just I've had conversations with people in between, and it was like, I felt like I was lying sometimes because I wasn't able to tell everybody everything because I wanted to tell PJ first. And then I still feel really bad because I told PJ, like, as soon as he got back from vacation, and, he had this nice tan going on, and then I told him, and then, like, all the color left his face. And I was like, dang, bro, what happened? But I will say honestly, that this series has helped me, and it has helped because I've been through these situations before of moving and whatnot. And so this has been really helpful as we've been talking about faith and all that. So today, as we're closing out our series, I think it's just important that we give ourselves permission to listen and re-listen and go through this series as many times as we need to, because this has honestly been one of my favorite series to be a part of. And I've been part of quite a few, but this really is one of my favorites because I've watched it impact people's lives, like, while we're going through it. Even us on staff, we've been impacted from it as we've been going through stuff in life as well. So if you've listened to all the parts, go back and listen to it again. There's no rule that says you can only watch a YouTube video one time. There's no way that Karen watched all that was BTS video billions of times, So there's other people watching, but we are allowed to watch stuff again. So let's do it. All right, so one thing I want you guys to ask yourselves today as we're going through the closing of this series is, what does my faith look like right now? Like, how is my faith level? If I had to gauge my fuel tank of faith, where am I at right now? Am I kind of just chilling at half a tank? Am I trying to drive? Am I driving on fumes? Y'all remember what it was like to be broke and you just trying to, if I could just make it to work, I know God will provide the rest on the way home, get some tips or whatever. Are we there with our faith right now? Or are we on a full tank? One thing is, I've noticed it in the series, I've got a chance to talk to people, and they're like, man, this series has been a great mirror for me because I've got to look at myself and go, whew, I'm running on E when it comes to my faith. But other people, they've been able to say, hey, this has actually been a really good series for me. I've taken these tools, I've applied them, and I'm seeing fruit, and I'm watching my faith level grow. And I think that's awesome too. And so for us, as we go through today, as you guys can look up there and see, we're going to be talking about Rahab today. And I like this story, and the more I studied it this week, I was like, I was telling PJ before, man, I really love the story of Rahab. She's got a really awesome story, and she's like us. And I know you guys are looking like, I'm not a prostitute. And you're right, you're not, but Rahab wasn't on the inside. She wasn't an Israelite. She wasn't one of these, notable characters in the sense of like she came from a promising, line and all those things, but she's relatable to us because she had a past, but it didn't deter her or her faith. All right, so, we've been going through Hebrews, and so just for the reading of the word of the Lord, I'm going to ask you guys to stand with me. We're in Hebrews chapter 11 still, and it says here that by faith, Rahab the prostitute, there it is, did not perish with those who were disobedient, because she had given a friendly welcome to the spies. Lord, thank you so much for your word and how it just continues to come alive. Father, I pray that as we go through the closing of this series today, Lord, that we would open up our hearts, that we would lean in, and really ask what you want us to take away from not only this message, but from this entire series, Lord. Help our faith to grow. Our faith can always grow. There's never a max out when it comes to that. So, Father, I pray that today you would transform our hearts, that you would open our minds to seeing what you have in store for us. We ask these things in your name. Amen. All right, you guys go ahead and grab a seat. All right, so like I said, I think Rahab is an awesome story, and we notice that in Scripture she's labeled as a prostitute. It's like, labels are some of those things that they throw on us that we don't intentionally ask for, but we get them. And so like, for example, yesterday I took my kids. Taryn was out, having coffee with some friends, and so I took my two younger kids to a buffet. Anton, you'd be proud of me, man. I'm baptizing them into the buffet family. And so I take them to the buffet, and there's another dad that's there with his son and daughter, and they're a little bit younger than mine. And so this little boy, he's like 5, right? And he's like, hey, Dad, if we eat all this food, man, we're going to get really fat. And his dad's like, yeah, we probably. And then right on cue, this oversized gentleman comes walking by, and this little boy looks at him, and he looks at his dad, and he goes, Dad, he must be the champion of fatness. And I was like, oh, snap. And I looked at my kids like, hey, y'all better not say nothing. And they knew. It's not cute at their age. So, but looking at this man, like he wasn't offended by it. But he wasn't offended by it because he doesn't view himself through that lens of being an obese man. All right, he doesn't view himself like that. And so because he has distanced himself from that label, he's not affected by it. He doesn't see himself that way. Unfortunately, for many of us, we do allow those labels to affect us. This is my look from high school. This is my look right here that and PJ was like, man, how'd you get your hair to match your sweater, and how'd you do that? And I was like, well, I got a wonderful wife who hooks it up. But it was like I wanted to present this to you because what we see is that God can redeem anything. And so if you went to Moreno Valley, California, you found some people that I graduated high school with back in 2004, aging myself a little bit here, they would describe me like this. Their words, their descriptions, everything would describe me like this. There are some people who were offended by this, and there's some people who are never going to see me past this. But the Lord has said, I can take that, the hair, the white T-shirt, and everything else that you've got going on there, the whole aesthetic, and I can use it for my glory if you'll let me. And you don't have to be defined and labeled. I can't change that people may always see me as Rahab the prostitute. But I know that God sees me as just Rahab, just Micah. That's who I am. And so when we meet Rahab, yes, she's in this position of being a prostitute, but that's just who she is the moment that we meet her. After that, that's not who she is anymore. And we get to watch somebody go through a conversion in real time as we read this story. I noticed that because I've had the opportunity to kind of jump into different fields of work. I've noticed that not all fields of work come with the same level of respect from people. It's like when the trash man that comes each week and grabs our trash doesn't get the same level of respect that doctors and lawyers get. It's not right, but it's true. It's what happens. Oftentimes we'll hear people ask, what do you do for a living? And in that moment, that's the most loaded statement that we hear sometimes because oftentimes what's happening when they're making that comment is that they're actually saying, how much respect do I have to give you in this situation? Oh, you're just a gardener? I can talk down to you. Oh, you're a judge? Let me cross my T's and dot my I's and pronounce my R's really hard so that just in case I need a favor in the future. And things change. What if when we went through life, people identified us by the worst thing that we ever did, or by who we were before we came to Christ? Now, I'm not asking anybody to yell out the worst thing that they ever did. That'd be a super bad idea, and Joe would say, don't even wait till mid-July. Go ahead and go now. So I just want you to think to yourself, maybe the worst thing that you ever did, maybe the person sitting next to you doesn't even know it. Maybe it's something that you struggle with. What if that's how we were identified? What if, and I did this at the first service too, I'm the only black guy in here, so I'm going to use some black names so that I don't accidentally use people's names out here, all right? So I know that there's no Quantrells out here, but like, what if you were like Quantrell the thief? Like what if you were, Tyravius, I know what Tyravius, what if you were Tyravius the addict? What if every time somebody introduced you or every time somebody talked about you, it was like, hey man, that's Mary the murderer, killed her husband. Whatever the case may be, I think if we start to look at it that way, our heart changes when we read Rahab's story because we start to say, man, God really can use anything. That's only who I was for just a second. I wasn't even that person for a long time. Now, she actually was this person for a long time, but we'll get to that later. We're going to jump in to Joshua, and we're going to go verse 1 through 15. But I'm going to kind of stop in between to give you guys a break and just to kind of explain what's happening. So we start off right here where it says, now, I'm tripping. I probably went too far already. Give me a second. I'm jumping ahead. Excuse me, boy. PJ got me all messed up. You're laughing. And Joshua the son of Nun sent 2 men secretly from Shittim as spies, saying, go view the land, especially Jericho. And they went and came into the house of a prostitute whose name was Rahab and lodged there. And it was told to the king of Jericho, behold, men of Israel have come here tonight to search out the land. Then the king of Jericho sent to Rahab, saying, bring out the men who have come to you, who entered your house, for they have come to search out all the land. But the woman had taken the 2 men and hidden them. All right. So there is kind of the start off of the story, and you see Joshua sending out 2 spies. I'm pretty sure one of them was Caleb. Not exactly sure who the second one was. Some people say it was a guy named Phineas, but we don't know for sure. But I'm pretty sure one of them was Caleb because he was in good standing. Joshua knows him. And so he sends these 2 spies out into the land. And I just want to start off by saying that them going into into Rahab's place was totally above board. All right, oftentimes back in, I guess probably still current days, if ever there's a place that you want to go to be nameless and faceless and you don't want your information getting out, there's a lot of discretion. From what I hear, I don't know personally, there's a lot of discretion in these places. And I know that there is a tendency to try to make Rahab look a little bit better in Scripture, and so they like to call her an innkeeper. And that's fine. It was a brothel, but if we want to call her an innkeeper, that's fine. She was probably a madam if it was a brothel, but it doesn't change the fact that she wasn't really an innkeeper because it says here that she was a prostitute. Some translations say harlot, but we just get, just for that. So there was nothing wrong going on with the spies going in there. This was a great place for information. Men are terrible when it comes to information. We just are. And we will talk. It's like our wives try to get us to talk and talk and talk. We won't do it. But then they go to these unsavory places and they can't shut up. And so even to this day, these particular, I think they call them like women of the night, or escorts and stuff now. They have fancy names. But they have a way of getting in with high-profile men and finding out information that they probably aren't supposed to know. And so this really was the perfect place for them to go to kind of hear what's going on in the city. And we know this is true because the king sends his men to Rahab to find out what's going on. We heard these guys came to town. But it talks about the high standing that Rahab also has within the community because the king came, he sent his men there, and they didn't bust down the doors. She's going to give them an account of what happened, and they're just going to take her word for it. All right, so she goes on to say, and she said, true, the men came to me, but I did not know where they were from. And when the gate was about to be closed at dark, the men went out. I do not know where the men went. Pursue them quickly, for you will overtake them. She's lying, all right, just so we know, she is lying. But she had brought them up to the roof and hid them with the stalks of flax that she had laid in order on the roof. So the men pursued after them on the way to the Jordan as far as the fords. And the gate was shut as soon as the pursuers had gone out. All right, so she lying, all right? So we know, and I'm not going to justify any of the lying that's happening here. Even she has good intentions, but that doesn't mean that we're supposed to lie just because we have good intentions. And so I just want to be clear about that. But she is protecting men of God, and I think that is awesome because as we're going to find out, she's heard about this. She's heard about God. Now, like I said before, she gives this word to the king, and she's just like, hey, listen, I don't know. They came here, and then they were gone, and the king's like, all right, cool, we got to go after them. And so she's got them up on the roof. And the way that the houses were built back then was like they had just these flat roofs. Like we have the pitch roofs now, but they just have flat ones. And so, you know, they would lay out the wheat and stuff on top of the roof to dry out. And so essentially what she did is she sent these guys up on the roof to lay down underneath all the stuff that was up there. And, you know, that's just, you know, some architecture stuff for you guys. So she knows what she's doing. But now they're going to have this conversation. All right, so it goes on to say, before the men lay down, she came up to them on the roof and said to the men, I know that the Lord has given you the land, and that the fear of you has fallen upon us, and that all the inhabitants of the land melt away before you. For we have heard how the Lord dried up the water of the Red Sea before you when you came out of Egypt, and what you did to the two kings of the Amorites who were beyond the Jordan, to Sihon and Og, they were giants, whom you devoted to destruction. And as soon as we heard it, our hearts melted, and there was no spirit left in any man because of you. For the Lord your God, he is God in the heavens above and on the earth beneath. This is amazing because right now, as we're reading this, what she's doing is she's having a come to Jesus moment. My mom used that term differently. That usually meant that you were getting a whooping, but that's not how I'm using it. She was having a come to Jesus moment where she's saying, okay, everything makes sense now. We've heard these stories about how the water parted. We've heard these stories about how these kings were defeated. We've heard the Israelites have a God that I have not experienced before. And she's a pagan, right? And so she's coming and she's saying, he is the God of the heavens above and on the earth beneath. She's converting right here before our eyes, and that's amazing. So if you read the Midrash, what they would say about Rahab is that they would say that she got into prostitution when she was about 10. And so she had been in this profession for 40 years. So she's a little seasoned, you know. So we're looking at about a 50-year-old woman here, and she's heard these stories because it's been about 40 years since they've wandered and whatnot. So she's heard these stories. Everybody has heard these stories about what God is doing with the Israelites and how he's impacting them and how people are just afraid. And so now the Israelites are pulling up and people are scared. And she's seeing it. She's like, yo, I'm seeing it firsthand. And she's saying, I don't want to be a foe of God. I want to be a friend of God. I've heard what he can do. I haven't seen it, but I've heard what he can do. I've seen how these stories impact people. And it starts off with a worldly fear, a very secular fear. But hers moves from a worldly fear to a godly fear. She's now declaring who the Lord is. At this point, she's just that enamored with who the Lord is. All right, so now she says, now then, please swear to me by the Lord that as I have dealt kindly with you, you also will deal kindly with my father's house, and give me a sure sign that you will save alive my father and mother, my brothers and sisters, and all who belong to them, and deliver our lives from death. And the men said to her, our life for yours, even to death. If you do not tell this business of ours, then when the Lord gives us the land, we will deal kindly and faithfully with you. Then she let them down by a rope through the window, for her house was built into the city wall, so that she lived in the wall. All right, so she's saying, I show compassion to men of God. Please show compassion to my family. All right, this godly fear that we see is you're going to see is now putting faith into action. And they give her our life for yours. As long as you hold up your end of the deal, we will hold up our end of the deal. If you get to talking about what happened, you're done. All right. And so now we talk about the rope that she let them down on. There's a lot of significance in this rope because initially this rope is used to sin. All right. It tells us that her house was built into the city wall. All right. So she lived in the wall, which meant that she was entertaining men within the city, but then the rope allowed her to entertain men from outside the city. They just got to climb up the wall and, man, do anything, right? I'm not climbing no wall. But now this rope that was once used for sin is now being redeemed by the Lord, and it's going to be used as a symbol to save her and her family. And what we see is that when God redeems, he does it on a big scale. See, when we get to the genealogy of Jesus in Matthew chapter 1, we see Rahab's name without the prostitute behind it. As God says, I can use anything. I'm not obligated to just have to use top tier stuff because everything's top tier to me. I don't have to use what you guys deem as quality. And so when you read through, it's a long, man, that's a long chapter of just names and names and names. They could have left her out. There was really no need to put her in there, but they put her in there. Salmon, however y'all want to say it. Salmon and Rahab, they had Boaz. And as we read Ruth, we see who Boaz is. So God is saying, listen, I can redeem anything. Any label, any profession, any lifestyle. If you bring it to me, I can make you clean. I can't stop people from identifying you as Rahab the prostitute. But I'm always going to look at you as Rahab. I'm not going to get caught up in all the other stuff. See, the reason why Rahab is so amazing is because, like I said, she's an outsider. She's not on the inside. She's only heard stories about what happened. But then she makes this profession of faith that we see where she's saying that for the Lord, your God, he is God in the heavens of above and on the earth beneath. She's professing, I want to be part of this. But it wasn't enough to just make that declaration. There's usually action that follows behind it. And so for a lot of us in our lives, what we do is we don't have a problem making the declaration of faith, but it usually stops about right here, and then we don't go any further than that. God, I trust and believe that you were born of a virgin, that you died, that you were raised, and that you ascended into heaven, that you're sitting at the right hand of the Father. Lord, I believe all that, but I don't believe that you can take care of me in a crisis. And so therefore, I got to kind of just keep my hands around what's happening because I don't know for sure. I don't have that level of faith. And so our faith really just kind of starts and stops at the same point. But what James says when he makes mention of Rahab in chapter 2, verse 25, he says, in the same way, was not even Rahab the prostitute, there's that title again, considered righteous for what she did when she gave lodging to the spies and sent them off in a different direction? As the body without the spirit is dead, so faith without deeds is dead. So our faith should drive us into action. I'm not talking about works that we do to try to get God to be impressed with us. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm actually talking about just out of just the sheer love that we have, that when we switch from having a worldly fear of God and switch to having a godly fear. See, worldly fear is what, they says the guys had no spirit. They were melting away. They're just, oh my gosh, God. But a godly fear is saying, God, I'm just so in awe of you. I'm so in love with you. I want to do what you do. It's not enough for me to say I'm a believer. I want people to know it. And it's kind of like being in a relationship and, your girl's like, hey, when are you going to post me? You never post me on Instagram or Facebook. Well, if you're with her, you got to post her. Man, you got it. They go hand in hand. You can only, as a man, you can only say that you're married for so long without showing people a picture of your wife before people are like, are you really married though? You can wear the ring and all that and say, I got married and have a great wedding story and all that. But are you really married, though? Like, your wife has to show up at the potluck at some point, bro. You know, like, shout out to my man Wayne, because every time he gets on here, he talking about his beautiful wife, right? So we know that Wayne is married, okay? It's not just words. There's action behind it. All right, that's got to be us, too. There's got to be action behind it. It's not enough to just say, oh, God, I love you, I trust you, and then we don't give him access to anything else. There's got to be some action behind it. You weren't here at first service, so I'm so glad you're here at this one, man. I didn't have anything like that for the first one, so that's awesome. Now, see, what she could have did is she could have just said, I got all this information that I need from the spies. I know what they're going to do. God, I still trust you. I still know that you are the God, the creator and all that, but I'm just going to grab my family and then we're going to dip out because I don't want to be here when all the craziness happens. But instead, she says, I know God's going to protect us. And she didn't even bring her family into the conversation. She was just like, hey, I need you to, she could have just said, just me. But she says family, but it's not like she's having a dialogue with them. She's just talking to the spies. It's just 2-on-1 having this conversation. And she's like, listen, I need you guys to swear that you're going to take care of us. And she knows God's got us covered. We're good. We're good. She didn't want to do it in her own strength like she could have. She wanted to rely on God. And so that's what she decided to do. So how are we looking now as we look at Rahab? And we're kind of coming to the end of that part. As we know, they do take Jericho. Her and her family are spared. But I ask us again now, what does our faith look like? Take a good look now that we've kind of witnessed somebody who wasn't on the inside, but we see how they acted. She had more faith than many of the Israelites who were eyewitnesses for God's goodness and God, how amazing he is. They were there to see the sea split. They watched, they beat out all these kings you're talking about, they were giants. They've beat out so many people. These Israelites witnessed it firsthand. She just heard stories, and it moved her to belief, and it moved her into action. But those who've seen it with their own eyes were like, I'll get around to it. So, what can we take away from Rahab? And the first thing is that godly fear should lead us to faith. So I have to ask, what kind of faith do we have? Do we have a worldly fear of God? Are we trying to find ways to please him? Are we just so afraid that he's gonna damn us to hell, that we're just trying to do the what we can? Or are we just in such reverence and awe of him that because of that we say, man, how can I not have faith in this man that's created so much? I think the one thing I've hung on to is when PJ was telling the story about how the human eye just it cannot evolve. You can't do it. And I go, man, if you just look at the human body and you just go, man, God, you put in so much effort into us. The way that things work. It wasn't like he just said, voila. It was like, no, he put so much thought into how this thing works. Once we know that, though, then we would say that faith should lead us into action. We should not be content standing on the sidelines just going, there go some Christians. PJ's got it. He'll hold it down. The elders will get it. I'm here to support them. No, he's got a wonderful cheerleader in Mama Rita. He doesn't need you guys to cheer him on. You guys have a job to do too. We can't be comfortable just sitting on the sidelines and not acting. There's a whole world of people out there that need to be saved. It's cool now to look at the Hall of Faith and say, how did they figure it out? How did they know? They made a decision and said, you know what, God, you're bigger than me, and I trust you, and I'm going to let go, and I'm going to let you do your thing. And that's got to be us. We just have to let go and let God do his thing. Don't get in the way. Just let God do his thing. And maybe you've listened to these messages and you've gone, you know what, man, I don't think God can do that for me. I needed God at a certain time in my life and he just didn't show up. I just can't trust him. God is not faithful. God is faithful. Every day he's faithful to each and every one of us. There's never been a day that God has not been faithful. And so then we move into a place of those labels that we give ourselves that people may not even know. God can't use me. I know that, I'm just lucky to be a Christian. But God can't use me because I used to be an addict and there's just no way that he's going to be able to use me for the glory of his kingdom. So I'm just going to be a believer and just be quiet so I can get into heaven. Some of us are saying, man, you know what? I used to mess around back in the day. I was a fornicator. God can't use me. There's no way he's going to let me work with youth. There's no way that because I used to dabble in drugs or I struggle with alcohol or I struggle with pornography, there's no possible way that I can be used for any glory in God's kingdom. So I'm lucky that he even allowed me to pray the prayer. But that's the best I can do. And the enemy loves it when we do that to ourselves because it keeps us from pursuing God. But just like we saw with Rahab, God says, I can redeem anything. Anything. I am a God of second chances. And if you'll bring it to me, I can redeem anything. We'll call the worship team up. I know I've said that this is like one of my favorite series, and I really do mean it because it's been like instant impact. It's been instant impact on people, which is exactly what we hope for. PJ spends so much time in prayer as he's asking the Lord, what does the church need? And the Lord puts these things on his heart, and he spends so much time finding these scriptures and putting together this stuff. But sometimes we can read through like the Hall of Faith, and we can get very jaded maybe, or we can look at it and say, that was so long ago. That doesn't make any sense to me now. That's Old Testament stuff. But what I love is that even after you get to the New Testament, you watch the disciples after Jesus is gone, and it's action. And all the disciples have their own disciples, and it's more action and action. But if nothing else, you can look at somebody like me. I'm not saying I'm Abraham. I'm not saying I'm Joshua, but I'm saying that you can look at somebody like me. That God had to redeem this. The hair, the shoes, the outfit, the attitude. God had to redeem me so that he can use me. And so the way I look at it is, God took a knucklehead screw up like me. And you guys know my story because I've told it all the time. When me and Taryn, when we had our oldest, we weren't married. Just living together, doing our thing. And God has found a way to redeem this, to use us for his glory. Where I am at in my life today is nothing about my actions have gotten me here. It's been all God. The rooms I've been in, the people I've spoke to, where I'm standing at right now today, it has nothing to do with me, and it's all God and just me saying, God, do your thing. I had to take a step of faith, and I was like, man, I don't know what it's going to look like when I get there. It was beautiful when I got here to interview, and then the whole world shuts down, and God's saying, no, I still want you to go, and I'm here. And now I got to move on to another chapter, and I'm like, God, I don't know what that's going to look like. And he said, we've done this before. I had you then, I got you now. I looked at my dad, and I watched my dad at the height of his career move from California across the country to Charlotte. And just when he had all his kids and his grandkids together, and he had everything going for him, the Lord said, hey, I need you to pack up. You're going to Arkansas. And immediately there was obedience, and he left and he went. Because at some point in time, there's this cycle that happens when you start saying, God, do your thing. He just starts asking more of you. And because you've seen him do his thing, you're good to just go on to the next thing. If that's not enough, if that's not close to home, PJ was working a great job. He didn't need to start a church. There's no money in this. But he got a call, and he went. He answered the call. I don't know what it's supposed to look like. I just know that the Lord told me to go, and I'm going to be obedient and go. Pastor Dwayne is here for 9, almost 10 years, and he says, the Lord said it's time for us to go. He packs up his 4 kids, his wife, and their dog, and they go. And there are so many people that I've had the privilege of speaking to in our church family, we're just talking Cornerstone, that have amazing faith stories. And I would encourage some of you to share your faith stories with others. We don't know who may be struggling, who may need to hear these words. Share how you've been redeemed. There's no shame here. We're all going through something. It's okay to share those parts of you that the Lord has now said, that ain't who I see. I don't see you as Rahab the prostitute anymore. You're just Rahab in my eyes. And then we just say, you know what, God? I'm just happy to be along for the ride. You guys stand with me in prayer. The intercessors are going to come up if you guys need prayer, please. They'll have the glow sticks on. God, thank you so much for just being you, for loving us, for caring for us. God, you don't see us for our past. You're not hung up on the labels by what we do. Father, teach us how to walk in your ways, how to pursue you, not to be fixated on works, Lord, but to be people of action, because we're so in love with you that it just drives us to show that love to others. We can't help but live our faith out loud. God, thank you so much for the heroes of the faith. And even thank you for those that don't even make the list, Lord, but as we read through Scripture, we see that they heard from you and they responded immediately. And God, that's who we want to be as your children. We want to be children of faith, that when you call us into action, we get right to it. Swift obedience in everything that we do, Lord. Thank you so much for the examples that you give. Thank you so much for those that have come before us. Lord, they weren't intending to make the Hall of Faith when they jumped into this. And neither are we, Lord. We just want to be people of action. So thank you for Abraham and for Sarah. Thank you for Enoch. Lord, thank you for Rahab, that she didn't let her title that people had given her deter her from a relationship with you. So Lord, open our hearts. Lord, forgive us for the times that we've not walked in faith, that we did not allow you to do what you do best. God, and that's provide, lead, and love. You have something great in store for each and every person that's in here. So, Father, I pray that you would help us to walk in the callings that you've given us, Lord. Watch over us as we go throughout our day, Father. Guide us. Help us not to leave this building the same way that we walked into it. Change our hearts. Transform us. We ask these things in your name. Amen.